Thank you all for being here. I want to start by speaking directly to our fans. I hear and I understand the frustration, and I feel it too. You deserve a team that competes at a high level and that is building towards something real and sustainable. Responsibility for delivering that belongs to me. I truly love the Chicago Bulls and what this team means to the city and our fans everywhere. And that is why we are here today. I, I want to thank AK and Mark for their dedication over the last 6 years. They are both people I respect and genuinely like. This decision was made after a lot of honest reflection about where we are and where we need to go as a team. We need to build a basketball team that will be successful for the long term. A consistently winning team that is in the playoffs every year and building towards a championship. Obviously, we're not there today, but I believe with new leadership, we can get there. And we should get there. And I know our fans expect us to be there. So do I. With the offseason in front of us, with the draft and free agency coming up, I felt it was important to make this decision now. New leadership gives us a chance to move forward and with fresh perspectives and a renewed and shared focus as we shape what comes next. During this transition, I will continue to work with John Paxson, who has been an advisor to this organization for many years, and our current basketball operations team while we conduct an external search for new basketball leadership. I also want to take a minute to speak about Billy. Billy is a Hall of Fame coach who not only has my respect, but the respect of the entire organization and locker room. While we will handle any conversations about the coaching staff the same way we always do at the end of the season, I want it to be very clear. We want Billy to continue to be the coach of the Chicago Bulls. At the end of the day, this is about bringing in a new leader for our basketball team that can build a winning team that our fans can be proud of. And so with that, I will open it up to questions.
Casey, go ahead.
Michael, I had two questions quickly about the search. It's pretty well documented that you're going to sit down with Billy. He's been clear it's going to happen at the end of the season because he wants to focus on this season. How will you kind of balance the delicate dynamic of giving him the space he needs to make his decision while also obviously beginning a search when you've got the draft lottery coming May 10th?
Well, I don't think it's going to take Billy a long time to come to a conclusion on what he wants to do. So I don't think the draft or any of that's going to come into play. So the season ends next week. We'll sit down with Billy as soon as possible, and we'll find out where his head's at.
And then about the logistics of the search, sometimes organizations use search firms. In this case, even if it's only to like screen calls and stuff, how will like the logistics of the search go, and how many candidates are you roughly seeking to interview?
Well, yesterday I got about 60 people texting me saying they wanted the job, but
exactly my point.
But I'm not going to do it that way. We are actually going to hire a search firm. I also had about 20 search firms reach out to me, but we are going to hire a search firm who's going to help us cast a wide net.
Julia?
Hi, Michael. Thanks for the time. I've got two as well. The first is just, this is not something that you, your family, the Bulls have done very often in terms of clearing house and going through a search like this. What do you expect to be different about your approach to avoid kind of what has happened recently with what happened with this most recent administration?
Well, you're right. We don't do it very often. The last time we did it was the first time we actually had done it in decades. But the last time we did it was March of 2020. And I don't even think we had the capabilities of doing this right now, having a Zoom conference call like this. I actually didn't meet Arturas in person until after we hired him. So it was kind of it was a really weird situation going through this process in my apartment in Chicago on Zoom calls, doing the interviews. Some of the calls were not on Zoom. We didn't hire a search firm last time. I think this process is going to be very different. I think it's going to I think we'll probably talk to more people and get a better understanding of what some organizations other organizations do. What things do they do right? What things do they do wrong? How can we get better? But I think hiring the search firm is going to be really helpful because they're going to really be able to find all the people out there that I probably would never have found. So that's why I think this is going to be different.
Definitely. And then my second question is just given how this has ended, how the last, 6 months or just the entirety of the season has gone, do you have any regret about not making this decision sooner and maybe putting the team in a better position to tank to put together just like a little bit of a better draft portfolio? Do you have any regrets just in terms of the timing?
I I don't like to use the word tanking,
That's
but
fair.
um, that's just not who we are as an organization. And I love Billy and really respect him as a coach. If I indicated to him that we wanted to lose games on purpose, we wouldn't be sitting down with Billy at the end of the year. He wouldn't be our coach. I think everyone out there who knows anything about my dad, they know how much he believes in um, being real and doing your best to win games. And it's unfair to it's unfair to the coach. It's unfair to the players. It's actually unfair to our fans. Sure, there are some fans, many fans who might say, lose games on purpose, tank, do whatever you can to hopefully win the lottery. But there are a lot of fans that go to the games who aren't there to see us get blown out every game and who want to see us compete. And I saw those fans when we beat Houston a couple of weeks ago. I saw the excitement. I saw the competitiveness of the game against Phoenix the other day. So I actually don't have any regrets. The lottery is a kind of a crapshoot, anyways. Last year, if Josh Giddey doesn't hit that half court shot against the Lakers, Cooper Flagg is the number one pick for the Chicago Bulls. So I don't want to mess with the basketball gods. We'll take our chances. We're going to have a great pick this year, regardless, and hopefully we can start this process for moving forward.
Thanks, Michael.
Sure.
Jamal Collier.
Yeah, Michael, I actually wanted to follow up on that exact point because this front office, I think, through the years is when people have asked about it, so their inability to pick a direction have maybe pointed to that desire to stay competitive. And I'm just curious of maybe why that strategy is that going to be maybe a mandate going forward for the next uh, leader of this group, and why do you believe that strategy maybe is preferable to what we've seen other teams, not maybe in some of the egregious tanking of it, but sort of prioritizing their draft position and young players over winning a game right now?
Well, we will prioritize the long term. I don't believe that you just do stuff for the short term. I just think that you have to be smart on how you build this up. And to many people, these games may not matter, but I'll take the example of that Houston game. It's a close game. We're up by 3 points. Modest has the ball, and he takes it to the basket and scores. To me, that was a great learning experience for Modest. So I think you have to, in terms of how we build this thing and the communication and whoever comes in and takes this position, they have to understand we want to win, but we don't want to win if it's not sustainable. I look back at, the team that we assembled when we traded for Vooch and DeMar and signed Lonzo. Obviously, if Lonzo had stayed healthy, that team would have been a pretty competitive team. Was it a championship caliber team? No. I'm not even sure at the end of the day whether that team would have been sustainable because there were some older players. So going forward, it's about sustainability. We want to build this for the long term. So I don't want to be just good for 1 or 2 years. I want it to be year in, year out. We have a chance to be competitive and win. And maybe some of those years we can win, go all the way. But it's about long-term success, not just about 1 or 2 year windows. I don't know if that answered your question, Jamal, but
Joel Lorenzi.
Hey, Michael, Joel Lorenzi with The Athletic. Obviously, you've talked about respecting Billy, prioritizing his presence with the organization. I imagine for the next candidate, they are eyeing and what they desire, maybe having a clean slate, maybe being able to choose their own coach. I just wonder how you feel Billy's presence, how you
Yeah.
anticipate it might affect that sort of thing, and if they do want a new coach, is that a non-starter?
Yeah, I think if we're interviewing someone and they want, of course, now I'm giving them the answers, but if I interview someone and they're not sold on Billy and they're not sold on a Hall of Fame coach, they're not sold on a person who's won championships in college, who's gone deep in the playoffs with Oklahoma City, who I believe with the Chicago Bulls every year, given the team that he was given, I think he achieved really good results. Not the results that we wanted, but that's not because of Billy. So if someone's not interested in Billy as our coach, and if Billy wants to be our coach, and someone's not interested in that, then they're probably not the right candidate for us.
And second thing, Michael, you said in 2020 something along the lines of like ownership should be able to pick the guy and sort of step aside and let the guy do basketball things. And you gave Arturis and Mark 6 years to sort of decide when they wanted to pivot and whatnot. And many would argue that they decided to wait too long. Oftentimes, how did that experience sort of inform the autonomy you maybe want to give the next decision maker and when to step in and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I have to hold myself accountable too, and we do give a lot of autonomy to our people, but that doesn't mean they can just make any decision they want. It's our job to ask the right questions and to push back when needed. So it's not just to be like, okay, we hired you now, now we're done. We're going to go off, we'll see you in a few years. Hopefully we're good. But we got to really ask the right questions, challenge, and, talk about our experiences. Uh, Look at other situations and just ask a lot of questions. I think I need to do a much better job of that. And hopefully that's what we'll get to.
John Greenberg.
Hey, hey, Michael, John Greenberg, The Athletic. The organization Billy left to come here, Oklahoma City, is obviously kind of the class of the NBA. They've managed to compile all this draft picks and all that stuff while also staying, very competitive. Do you look at organizations like that, and do you have an idea of like what organization you want the Bulls to model themselves after in the modern age of the NBA?
Sure, I want to be like Oklahoma City.
But how do you, I mean, do you really, you're a governor, you've been doing this for a while. What teams do you,
Look,
do you look at?
there's, I actually really admire. I've always admired Oklahoma City. Obviously, Sam Presti, and I've thought this for years. He's the best general manager out there in basketball. Sam does things a lot different than other teams. If you look at Oklahoma City, I think Sam's title is he's GM, and then he has a bunch of other people in his organization, but he doesn't have. It's not set up like a head of basketball operations and then a general manager like we had with Arturis and Mark. So what we're going to do through this process is we're going to look at all the organizations and say what are things that we really admire about these teams? What are they doing that we haven't been doing? What can we do differently? Clearly, Oklahoma City is, they're the world champs, and Sam is a very unique individual. And if you look back at it, I think he was hired when he was a 28-year-old. So um, he's there's a lot we can learn from other teams in the league for sure.
And will you, I mean, are you going to change the way, the kind of hierarchy? Is that something you're thinking about? Like of the way you set up like a front office, I mean.
Yeah, I'm not making that. I'm not making that decision now.
Mhm.
And I think when we start talking to candidates and we start talking to people, I want to hear what their thoughts are. How are they going to build out their organizations? I think that's really important. When you hire someone, the most important thing is not just that person; it's who they bring on board with them. It's how they build it out. But I want to see how other people, how they view things, how they would set it up. So I'm not predisposed right now to say, okay, we're going to go hire a head of basketball operations and then general manager. We may go general manager route and then have a lot of assistant general managers. We'll see what happens.
Joe Cowley.
Yeah, I got two questions, Michael. One, with the meeting with Billy, is there any scenario where he and just talking to him, I know he's a kind of a stay in his lane type guy, but is there any scenario where you guys may have to offer him a louder voice in player personnel, players picked, player discussions? And he's already said he doesn't want to move into the front office, but does a title maybe have to be offered to him when you guys do sit down? Is that on the table?
You know, when we hired Billy, I think what was really important to him at that time was that he did have input in the organization, in the players, in terms of acquisition. Obviously, a coach is not going to get too involved when it comes to the draft because they haven't watched these players. But we'd be crazy not to want Billy's input about player acquisition from players throughout the league. Like, he's an NBA coach. He coaches against these guys. Some of these guys he's already coached. So Billy will be involved and will be encouraged. I probably will push Billy to be more involved.
Would that be a title that gets added to him?
I doubt that, but if Billy wants to look, as you said earlier, Billy doesn't want to be the next general manager, but if he came to me and said, "Hey, I may want to do a Brad Stevens situation," I would sit down and listen to Billy. I don't think that's where his head's at.
Right.
But no, so I don't think Billy cares about titles. Billy cares about being a head coach, and he cares about the players and cares about the organization. I think that's what's the most important thing. I hate getting so bogged down in titles. I think what's more important is what your responsibilities are. What input do you have?
My other question too is you talked about your philosophy of wanting to always stay competitive and never wanting to be a tank team. Does that philosophy in this process have to be looked at? I mean, when you look at the White Sox side of things, their last playoff run was because of a tank that they rebuilt. The Cubs tanked, rebuilt. The Bears tanked. They've rebuilt. They're a playoff team. I mean, do you guys have to, Detroit, San Antonio, do you guys have to start taking a look at that philosophy and saying, hey, there's a time and a place to do this, and maybe we have to be more prudent in changing our philosophy of always be competitive, always strive for the play-in game, always strive for, X, Y, Z, and just take an organizational look from ownership down?
Well, first of all, Joe, I never strive to be in the play-in tournament only. Like that was never the goal. Second of all, we don't know where the lottery changes are happening.
That's true.
So it's really hard to say that right now. There could be a situation. Well, what's out there and what's been talked about. So we have to see where the league goes. And once we know where that league goes, that's really important. Understanding that trend. We haven't always done that. We haven't always recognized the trends of where things are going. Back in 2012 or 13, whenever, the 3-point shooting started to increase, I bet you had we anticipated that more and how much that was going to change, we probably would have had a different decision making on some of the players that we drafted. So you got to stay ahead of this. I think that's something I forget who referenced Sam Presti, but that's something Sam does really good. That's something he's really good at, is anticipating. So we got to anticipate. So we'll see where the lottery changes happen. Then we'll determine what's the best way to build this thing. Right now we are in the lottery. So, it's kind of, not within our control at this point.
Guys, we have time for 2 more questions. We're going to go to Drew Stevens and then Will Gottlieb. Drew, go ahead.
Drew Stevens with the Bigs. Michael, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So you rewarded failure in giving Arturas and Mark their last round of contract extensions. How will you define success moving forward, and what benchmarks will you set for the next front office to ensure that it's moving on the right track?
Well, that's an easy question. You define success many different ways, but ultimately for our fans and for the media, I think it's going to be about wins and losses.
So that's the same thing that AK and Mark said pretty much every time we spoke to them, but specifically, especially in terms of benchmarks, when you do hire this next front office, what will you evaluate them on?
Okay. So you're saying, what are you asking me? Like, what am I looking for in a new hire?
Yes and no. So what I'm really asking you is,
okay. Here's what I'll say. I'll tell you, because I thought someone would ask me this question, but no one actually asked me the question. But what am I looking for? And then once you hear this, and once we add to the final list, I will evaluate it based on this. Okay, so I want someone who's process oriented. I think some of the biggest mistakes we've made over the years is we have not followed a process. I think that's really important. Conviction. I think we need someone who's not afraid to pull the trigger. Communicator. Okay. We have a history at the Bulls in the top position other than Pax. They haven't always been the best communicators going back to the days of Jerry Krause. Like, it wasn't one of Arturas's strength, okay? In terms of communicating with the media, but I want someone who's really strong in communication, not just internally within the organization, but also externally when he's talking to people like you, talking to our fans. I think that's really important. What are we trying to accomplish? What is the plan? Our fans have a right to understand what we're trying to accomplish. So I think that's incredibly, incredibly important. We talked a little bit about trends, whether it's, the evolution of three-point shooting, cap increases, back in 2015 or 16, clearly Golden State saw what was coming with the cap increases. They saw where media was headed. They saw probably a couple of years ahead of time, hey, with the new TV deal that's coming up, the cap's going to increase X amount. And I think they got ahead of that. And they made decisions that allowed them to actually sign guys like Kevin Durant. So I think that's really important. Talent. I think one of the things from a business standpoint that I'm really proud of that I've done is I've surrounded myself with really smart people. So whether it's Ram Padmanabhan, Matt Kobe, Susan Goodnow, those are, the people that I work with directly on a day-to-day basis. They are really, really smart. I think it's really, really smart that whoever takes this role has people on board that when I look at them, I can say, hey, one day that person is probably going to have his job. I don't want someone who's let's say he's the general manager. Let's say we go the head of basketball and then general manager route. If we're hiring a general manager, I want to know that the guy I'm hiring, I'm probably going to lose at some point if he doesn't become my head of basketball operations. That's really, really important to me. Obviously, basketball evaluator. At the end of the day, you got to get the players right. So that's going to be really important. Collaboration. The role is going to require you got to work across the scouting departments, development, analytics, performance. You got to have that alignment. That's really, really important. So we're going to have someone who understands alignment. That's going to be critical. Manager. There was a time when you could hire a scout to be your head of basketball operations, and then you'd be fine. The basketball operations department is so big. I mean, just look at our organization. There's so many people. You need to understand how to manage people, and you need to know how to organize them at a high level. So those are the type of things. And believe me, we're probably going to add to this list, but I was just like writing some notes down before I came in here. I was like, who am I looking for? That's just the beginning. I think we'll start to flush more of that out as we start this process. And then going forward, then we can hold ourselves to that. If the person's not communicating, that's going to, we're going to know it. That's something that we don't stand for anymore. That's how we're going to hold ourselves more accountable.
Last quick one from Will Gottlieb before we wrap up.
Hi, Michael. Will Gottlieb, CHGO. I guess I'm curious, just, it's pretty widely reported that last summer you gave Arturas and Mark extensions, and then obviously by the end of this year, it went the direction it went. Can you kind of take us through just the year as you saw it in terms of your evaluation of the direction that they were taking things and how your perception of them changed over the course of the year?
Well, first of all, Will, where is your source that we extended their contracts last year?
It was just kind of widely reported.
I mean, if Shams didn't report it, then it obviously didn't happen. But no, in all reality, that's just not true. So we don't ever talk about contract lengths. All the guys that have been here for many years, Joe, Have you ever heard us talk about contracts? Like, we just don't do it. So in terms of that, not something I want to discuss. In terms of, are you asking me to like evaluate the last year?
I guess I'm just curious, how the process of your evaluation of them changed over the course of this year. Like at what point did you start to think about maybe making some changes?
Over the last few months, I started looking at where we were at, and I thought to myself, how are we going to get out of this mess? And to Arturas's credit, he did clean it up at the end, right? Like, we went to that trading deadline. We saw we had 2 players that were not under contract next year. We didn't want to lose them for nothing. And we acquired some draft assets. I know a lot of people think that second round picks have no value, but they do have value. If you ask general managers in basketball, they'll tell you it is a currency. It can be helpful. There's been guys that have been picked in the second round that have been effective. But the bottom line is, we have all our draft picks going forward, first round picks. Next year, we have our first round pick, or this, coming in June, we have our first round pick. That's going to be whatever it's going to be based on the lottery. We have Noah coming back, who basically it's almost like having a second top 10 pick because he didn't play all last year. There's a slight chance or whatever. I don't know. Portland makes the playoffs. We have their pick. And then we have $65 million or so in cap space. I just felt like now is the time. Like, we tried the other route. It didn't work. We failed. And now we're in position to get this right. Clean slate. So that's kind of how I went through the process. Does that answer your question, Will?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay.